Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Project Y podcast, where I, Arielle Zappia, bring on different experts in the homelessness field and we discuss a variety of topics surrounding homelessness. Today's episode topic will be relationships and homelessness, and our special guest is Jenni Taylor. Jenni, do you want to kind of introduce yourself, sort of tell your job title and where you work?
Yeah, thanks, Arielle. So excited to be here. My name's Jenni Taylor. I am the general manager of Miracle Messages here in Los Angeles.
And how does Miracle Messages work?
So, Miracle Messages, we're really focused on relational poverty. And we found in the area of homelessness, Miracle Messages started in San Francisco and now we're in LA. And you see it everywhere, and you see a lot of people trying to help. There's food service providers and shelters, and so much going on around physical needs. How can we meet your physical needs and get you there? But what we realized next is that there are emotional needs that need to be met as well. So we have two main programs on how can we help people rebuild their relationships. And one thing we do is we help people reunite with their families. And the other thing we do is we set them up with a volunteer who calls them every week to just be that form of social support for them.
Mm-hmm. That's really amazing. Thank you so much. And I wanted to ask, I know that there is a TED Talk that really goes deep into the mission of Miracle Messages. And in terms of that, why is the combination of the lack of housing plus that social home so important in understanding relationships within homelessness and just in general?
That is such a good question. And I think that's really where this got birthed out of. So, if anyone's interested, the TED Talk is by our very fearless leader, our founder and CEO. His name is Kevin Adler, Adler. If you look up Kevin Adler TED Talk on YouTube, he's there. But this really came out of Kevin. He had an uncle who was experiencing homelessness,
Mm-hmm.
and just watching him go through that and trying to figure out how can we support him, where does family play a role in, and what are the boundaries with that, how far do we go, what does this look like to help keep him off the streets and to give him a lot of love. And so Kevin founded Miracle Messages. And the first idea around that idea of homelessness, we asked the question, instead of asking, why are people homeless? We
Mm-hmm.
changed the question to, why aren't more people homeless? Right? What's
Yeah.
that dividing factor? There's so many people out there that are just one paycheck away, but they're still doing it. So what is that differentiation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what we found was it was family, it was friends, it was the idea that my mom can watch my kids when I go to work so I don't lose my job. I can sleep on my friend's couch when things get really rough. They had people in their lives to kind of get them through that rough patch and get back on their feet. So what we found with our friends and our unhoused neighbors who are experiencing homelessness, so many of them don't have that. They don't have the family members around who can step up and give that aid. They don't have friends in their life who are checking in on them, making sure that they're okay. And that was the gap we really wanted to fill.
Yeah.
So there's such a good question on how housing and the social relationship aspect goes together. When you don't have people supporting you, it could be any one of us going through a rough patch, and if no one's there to help, we do get left out in the cold.
Yeah, I also think that's so important. And I think even through my interviews that I've done now, one of the most prominent issues that I've seen is really almost a failure by the family and by the surrounding people. Because I think a lot of the time, whether people are born into homelessness or whether a variety of different circumstances cause them to experience homelessness, a lot of the time, the biggest issue is just like you said, they don't have that friend to go sleep on the couch with, or that mom that they're able to drop the kids off for school or just for some babysitting while they need to go to work. And I think that that's so important, because a lot of the people, there could be other circumstances of course that lead to it, but the relationships are really at the core of all of our lives. And that's why I really loved the vocabulary term sort of social home, because I think that that is so important in understanding that although yes, it's super important to be able to have a roof over your head, having a group of people that are really there to constantly support you whenever you need, whether, it's in the highest points of your life or the lowest lows, to just really be there and to be able to support you through that all is so, so important. And that really does
Mm.
separate people from, just living that kind of paycheck to paycheck life from having to live on the streets or in shelters because they don't really have that sort of system to keep them up.
Yeah, that was so well said, Arielle. And I think we all went through that, when we think about loneliness and isolation, we all kind of went through that with the pandemic so recently.
Yeah.
And yet, for many of us, we could be in our home and we're feeling that isolation from people, but we could still do a video call with someone. We still had people checking in on us. We still had, online games and people watching movies together at the same time. And there were still these interventions. And so, just as you said, just having the roof, if you can imagine someone, who has gone through homelessness, walking into, they finally got a room, they finally got their apartment, they're so excited, they walk in and then they look around and there's no one to celebrate with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we can really step up and say, how can we bring social support back together for your life? Yeah, yeah, very well said.
And I also think, I know that you mentioned that there are, of course, the two programs, the one part where you're reuniting families, but then the other where you give them, a volunteer that's there to talk to them. And I think that's also really important because some people, they may have that social home that maybe they're not connected to right now that can be really helpful to reunite them, but others just may not have that social group. And being able to really form connections with these volunteers who are there to truly help them and want to be able to be friends to these people and want to be able to create a sort of social home is so, so amazing too, because of course everybody is kind of in different situations and there's a reason why everybody gets into this situation, which is of course what Project Y targets. But then being able to provide them with somebody to help them and to be able to support them if they don't have that is also really, really incredible.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And when one of the projects very early on in Miracle Messages, this is several years ago, but we did ask some of our friends experiencing homelessness if they were willing to just wear a GoPro throughout the day and just show us what their day was like,
Yeah.
just kind of get information. What is life like for you? And there were a lot of takeaways from that project, but from those recordings that I watched, my biggest takeaway that brought me to tears was no eye contact,
Hmm.
whether they're asking for money, not asking for money, whatever the case may be. But this was someone going through his whole day where all of these strangers who are housed didn't want to interact or, and I think there's a lot of social aspect that needs to change around that, right? To kind of lessen the fear. And we're like, oh no, this person's going to ask me for money, or I don't want to engage, or let me look away and walk on the other side of the street. But what you see day after day is no social connection, no one to just talk to. And that can just be so powerful. I know we've all had that of having a bad day and being able to just talk to someone can make
Yeah.
such a difference.
Yeah, and that's why I think too it's so important to be able to spread awareness and educate people about the causes of homelessness. And even if it's not just the causes, just the fact that homelessness exists and that each one of these people is still their own person. I think, I've talked to you about this so much too, just about the fact that it's become such an issue, especially in bigger cities like LA, where people just see it as such a large topic and something that's so normalized and sort of generalized. But really, each one of these people has their own unique story, and each one of these people has, those sort of different circumstances that brought them to this place. And it's so important to be able to kind of separate them from the overall issue of homelessness and understand that they're still just a person too. And even if, you don't give them money, giving them just a nice smile is so important, or a cookie or something like that, to just say, hey, whether I can help you right now or not, just I'm here, and we
Yes.
see you as people too. Because I know, like, even, through my interviews too, so many people have just been thankful that they're able to talk to somebody and that somebody's
Mm,
there to listen to them, because once they get to this point, it's like they're almost just brushed off to the side. And a lot
yeah.
of times, seen as statistics within a lot of organizations that are meant to help them, it's sort of just like, okay, let's bring more people in and put on our website that we've housed X amount of people. But in reality, it's you have given these people a home, and you're really there to help them. So I think along with just providing them, with that social home and with reuniting them, just everyday lives, being able to smile at people and recognize people as people, just as we do to everybody else. And that's why I think too, within that TED talk, when he mentioned that we view our unhoused neighbors as unhoused. That's kind of that one part that separates them from everybody else. But I would never, look at you and say, oh, she's housed. And I think that
Exactly.
that was so important and really eye opening to
Mm,
me too, because that it's such a small factor that we use to just completely separate and truly segregate people from the rest of society, just by the fact that they may not have room with four walls and a roof over their head. That does not necessarily mean that they're any different from anybody else.
yeah. Oh man, you're hitting on so many good levels here, and each one deserves its own podcast, but it's so true. It's so true. And so I think that's something I really love. So just to back up, I was new to this work and I didn't even realize how lonely and isolated people were until
Mhm.
someone told me. I was kind of really focused on their physical needs, like, oh, maybe if they do just get a room or a bed, they'll be happier, they'll be taken care of. We're solving the problem, right?
Yeah.
And so I learned so much coming through this that so many of the people we're serving, we've done over 700 family reunions now, which is incredible.
Definitely.
But the average year of separation from their families is 13 years,
Wow.
where so many, and that's out of 700, plus or minus clients
Hmm.
who they haven't seen their family in that long. So there is a portion of how important that is that was a learning curve for me to realize. I did not realize how complicated that was. When you don't have an address, you might lose your phone number, how to get back in touch with someone, and how easy it is to get lost in the shuffle. So that's a takeaway. And then the other part, what I love, some people, maybe they don't have family to reunite with, or they're not ready to reunite with their family. There could be background problems. But our
Hmm.
second program is addressing so much of what you said, of volunteers getting having the chance to get involved and saying, okay, maybe we can't reconnect you with your family, but we'd love to give you a friend.
Yeah.
Is it okay? And it's kind of like a pen pal program, just over the phone. So instead of letters, you're still meeting a stranger who might have some common interests. We say, what are you into? What do you like to do?
Hmm.
And we match people who are going through this tough time with a caring volunteer. And it's just for weekly check ins. And it's very different. We have emergency hotlines. And if you call, first of all, that's for emergencies. Number two, you're talking with a stranger every time you call, right?
Yeah.
It's a bunch of different people answering the phone. And this one, I think it's two ways. One, we're trying to help our friends know that they're not alone. But for the volunteers as well, I found it so fulfilling for me to say, I care about homelessness, but I've never actually connected or made a friend with someone who's been through this before.
Yeah.
And for me to get on the phone, to meet someone that I never would have talked to otherwise, to separate it, just as you said, where it's not about the issue, it's about the person and just getting to know them and talk, and taking off that pressure of, I'm not here to give you housing. I'm not here to give you money. I'm not here to solve your problems. I'm not going to be your therapist either. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have, just because I'm housed doesn't mean I have answers or I have it figured out. I'm not above you in any way, but I do want to be your friend. Let me
Yeah.
listen. Let me just be here and let's share. Let's get to know each other. Lots of laughter on our conversations. But that was so, sometimes we think we're giving back to someone who needs more than we do. But I
Mhm.
would say I've gotten just as much back of having this new experience of talking with someone I've never talked to before and building that relationship together.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And even I've had that experience. I know I'm not currently volunteering for Miracle Messages, but just through my interviews, I've been able to foster a lot of relationships with these people. And actually, during the holidays on Thanksgiving, my dad and I, we went to buy a lot of supplies like food, clothes, stuff like that,
Mm,
to bring to some of the first shelters that I interviewed at. And when I went there, everybody was so happy to see me. And I think that was so
yes.
amazing. one, to of course know that I made a difference in their lives, but also to know that I did create more connections with them and I was able to kind of act as that friend. And I'm always very open to, providing them with my contact information. And there were people who I
Mm,
would email with and talk to, and they were like, I loved my story on your blog and stuff like that. So I think just any way to connect is so, so important. And,
yeah.
with donating those things, of course, yes, they needed the food, they needed that. But I think seeing me, somebody who they made a connection with, then go to, another step to be able to bring them those supplies really kind of, I guess, brought it all together. And I think really, made a difference in my life and my perspective of homelessness, but of course also
Mm.
in their lives.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. And just the way, your blog is uplifting their voices and their stories,
Yeah.
um, is just so powerful. And so we're doing that on the phone as a friendship, but I think amplifying those voices, making them even louder, is so, so beautiful. And we just love what you do.
Thank you so much. And I think that this sort of thing overall goes into another great question of how do you think the role of that stable relationship, whether it's with, reuniting these people with their families or just providing them with a friend, how does that affect our different unhoused neighbors?
Oh man. It's I'm always surprised. It's such a simple idea of here's a friend who's going to call you once a week.
Hmm.
And yet when I get feedback, I have people, just yesterday I had a woman crying on the phone with gratitude.
Wow.
And she said, and I was just checking in. Hey, happy holidays. Just want to see how the friendship's going. How can we support you?
Hmm.
And she just said, my spirits were so low. And she said, they were so low. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. Things had just gotten even worse. And suddenly I had to live out of my car, which has never happened to me before. And she said, my volunteer just encouraged me and lifted my spirits when I needed it the most. And that was just yesterday. So that's one story of many where I'm even surprised at the takeaways of how powerful they can be of calling just at that moment. You might not even know it's the moment they need you the most, but just saying consistently, I'm going to show up, I'm going to check in, I'm going to encourage you.
Yeah.
And just how powerful that was really beautiful to hear.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think it's also really incredible that you keep in touch with them to make sure that all of the volunteers are doing what they need to do and really providing, a sort of social friend for all of our unhoused neighbors.
Yeah, we want everyone to feel supported and on both sides too. For our volunteers, sometimes a conversation can be really tough. You
Yeah.
might get on the phone with someone who's been through something you've never been through, and it's
Yeah.
hard, and maybe you're not sure what to say or what to do. Our team supports the volunteers just as much to say, hey, call us. We can help you through this. Let us know what's going on and to connect them to resources just like you do in your blog, Arielle, of like, okay, we can't solve your problems, but we can send you in the right direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want our volunteers to feel just as supported because it can be hard. Some of these conversations can be really tough. A lot of the times they're not, but sometimes it can get really heavy.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's really amazing. And sort of with that, do you want to share how other people can get involved with Miracle Messages mission and how they may be able to volunteer to help our unhoused neighbors?
Yes, thank you for asking that. For everyone listening, first of all, just thank you for caring about this issue and supporting just by wanting to learn and being on this podcast and being here. But we are looking for volunteers, and it's all digital. We would do a Zoom training with you on what to expect and how this would all work. And when you feel comfortable, we would match you with someone who's experiencing homelessness. You guys would exchange phone numbers. We even have dial pad or Google numbers if you want to keep your phone numbers safe. We walk you through all of that. And then you would kind of pen pal through the phone with texts or with calls and just say, hey, I want to call you on Friday and let's start to get to know each other. So, especially with the holidays, guys, we would love to have more volunteers come in. We'd love for you to learn more about it. You can go to our website, miraclemessages.org, and I'm sure we'll put it in the info for this podcast as
Yeah.
well. But come and check it out. When you come to the info session, you're not saying yes to anything yet. You're just finding out more. And if it still feels really good to you, that's when we'll pair you up. So it's a really cool way to bridge that gap and make it about one person when the issue can feel so big and overwhelming. This is a great way to try and know that you're changing someone's life.
Thank you so, so much for sharing that.
Yeah, guys, it's just it's such a joy to do this. It's such a joy to see this work and be a part of it and watch people connect and watch people get out of their comfort zones on both sides, you
Yeah.
know? It's a funny thing like, "Hey, go call this stranger," and next thing you know, they really are friends.
Yeah.
Um, it's just beautiful to me. We've had people meet up in person after a few months if that's something
Wow.
that they're interested in. It's been really beautiful, just like for you, going back to the shelters and getting to see people. It can be really special. Yeah. So
Yeah.
for the holidays, I think loneliness can be really hard. So this is a great way to give back.
Yeah, thank you. And I think now moving on to our final question, our special question of the day, more directed to you, Jenny, is how has learning about the importance of relationships affected your view on homelessness overall?
Oh man, I think I got rocked. I I knew I'm not from Los Angeles originally. I'm from Chicago and
Oh,
it's a little less visible there. And so coming to Los Angeles and just seeing the issue first felt so overwhelming. But this work gave me so much hope to go into the relationships. I think I said earlier, I didn't even know that people had lost touch with their families. I think I had a lot of stigmas in my mind before starting this work of, oh, something must have gone wrong.
mhm.
That's not always the case. I think I've learned so much about dropping the things I was taught. I was taught be careful, like don't trust people who are on the street. Maybe just give a granola bar, but don't get involved. And I think unlearning those messages and knowing that we can do so much and that these are just people to be loved and not problems to be solved has been my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And thank you so, so much for coming on today and talking about your experience in this field and talking about how amazing Miracle Messages is.
Yeah, no, this has been such an honor. Thank you for your time.
And with that, thank you all so much for listening. Again, my name is Arielle Zappia. To check out Project Y's website, feel free to go on www.projecty.biz. And if you would like to donate to help me continue, posting blogs and also recording these episodes, feel free to just click on the donate button. And all donations are one time, and that'll really, really help support me. And then, of course, please feel free to also go on, of course, miraclemessages.org to check out what Jenny is doing and what Miracle Messages does for so, so many of our unhoused neighbors.